Hello everybody, here we are today talking about the fors and against of a shortened NHL regular season. So before we get into that, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So yeah, a couple years ago, obviously we had a shortened regular season due to COVID-19 and all that stuff, and it sparked a lot of talk about whether or not this was more fun. The divisions got realigned and all that stuff, and then it just kind of got back to where we get to a normal schedule. But I do want to talk about whether or not we could see a better version of the NHL if the regular season was shorter, and then I'm going to give my verdict by the end of the video. So kicking it off with the fors, I would say that one of the good things about this would be the fact that there are less games, which means that there are more important games, and the rivalries or just divisional games, all that stuff would be so intense, knowing that a loss very well could end your season, because if they shorten it down to 56 games again or something like that, you really could not afford to lose 2 or 3 times to a divisional rival. So yes, more drama in the standings, and another for is maybe seeing less games equals less injuries. That isn't necessarily a guarantee. However, with the wear and tear of the sport and the physicality of the game we love, it's not completely uncommon to see maybe multiple guys in your team, your favorite team, get hurt, if not the star player of your team get hurt on a regular basis. Maybe not every season, but with regular enough occurrence that it is a problem. So a big for here, especially with teams that have a lot of stars, would be that there's less chance theoretically of them getting injured. As for our third for, in terms of a shortened regular season, you could see with less games maybe being better or more action, if you will. With the advent of NHL Edge, or the release of it, we have seen some of these things like speed burst and miles traveled and all that, and it really just puts things into perspective as to how many miles these guys skate and just the wear and tear again of this game. However, who's to say that while there will be less miles skated and things like that, we couldn't see an increase of things like speed burst? We talk a lot already about the fact that there are so many guys that are in the 5th percentile or whatever of speed burst over 22 miles per hour. Who's to say that with less games we wouldn't see a higher percent? Now mind you, the numbers would be lower because there's less games that do it, but guys would be a little bit more fresh, being able to take the puck up all the way to the ice with a little bit more pep in their step. As for the final for with this, we could see with less games maybe some things get rescheduled or just realigned, where there would be more rivalry games. Now, I don't exactly know how that would work. I'm not an expert here in NHL scheduling, but I know with less games, if you are able to schedule more rivalry games, you're in a spot where if you miss the playoffs because you played a team that is one of your biggest rivals, even if they're not in your division, you could definitely say that that creates more friction. More friction creates more energy and more focus on the game, meaning that more fans are interacting with this occurrence. Now for the against, I would say the biggest one being that records are much more difficult to have. Let's say that you go to a 60-game schedule or something like that, you would see it be much harder to catch up to any records. Basically every Wayne Gretzky record you can just kiss goodbye, even though you really probably should if you are most players now. But with this, again, seeing even things for your franchise records, you're probably not in a situation, unless you play for 15 to 20 years, going to be able to catch up to a lot of these records, unless your franchise has been historically bad and not had great players, or it's a young team. So the records are a big deal in my opinion. Now this isn't necessarily a given, but I've heard with less games we could see something of an in-season tournament like we've seen with the NBA. From what I know, soccer obviously has an in-season tournament. I'm just going to say that it feels like copying somebody else's homework, and it feels wrong. Now, I'm not completely opposed to other sports doing an in-season tournament, and here's why. Specifically for soccer, a lot of these things are very old and very historic, so they mean something. I think it's the FA Cup for England or whatever. It goes back for the Premier League, I should say, a very long time. And a lot of guys that maybe weren't making a lot of money back then were doing it for pride. They're doing it for the club, doing it for the guys that they ended up playing with out on the pitch, if you will. I'm not exactly sure what it's called. But yeah, they were doing it because there was a unity and it meant something for them, for their region, and it was really important. Whereas the NBA, it's in its infancy and it's a money grab. That's all it is. So especially if we do it, it basically looks like, well, we're just copying the NBA because they had a money grab, so why don't we do that? I don't necessarily think that doing this is going to mean great success. I don't really think it's necessary. And in the grand scheme of things, why would you want to see a tournament where your favorite players could get hurt when you just don't care? I mean, it just doesn't mean anything for us. I'd much rather see your team win the Stanley Cup, or my favorite team win the Stanley Cup, than see them win some dumb in-season tournament that is just, again, a cash grab. And another against is longer periods of no hockey with a reduction of games means that there's less games to be played, meaning that there's going to be longer periods without you getting to watch the games. Now, I know everybody doesn't watch all 82 games, and I can't say that I've watched 82 games of the Canucks. Obviously, they haven't played 82 games, but still, I watch hockey on a regular basis, multiple times a week, almost daily or nightly, if you will. And to have long periods where they're off is probably good for the players, but at the same time, for a fan, it feels like the off season is already long enough, just waiting for them to come back. But with less games, it means that you're going to be bored more often if this is something that you're really passionate about. As for the final thing, this is just really weird, but you would see less money for the players because, again, if we're going by average pay, if the pay is going to be staying relatively similar at the same rate, players are going to have to agree that their contracts are going to have to be smaller. And I hate to say this, but nothing makes my feathers bristle more, I guess, if you will. That's not even the right phrase. I know it's not. When you hear non-NHL fans talk about what's the highest paid hockey player, and you have to say, what is it now, Matthews, I think, or McKinnon, somewhere around there, and you mention the contract, and they say, really, basketball players make a lot more. Football players make a lot more. I don't know about soccer players because I don't really watch soccer. I don't watch basketball or football either, really. And let me tell you, boy, is it annoying. Not necessarily so much that they're asking the question or making that statement, but I hate saying how much the top paid players are making because it just feels like they automatically are like, well, because they're making a lot less, they just don't deserve it or whatever the case is in their mind. And I feel like it just makes the league look more amateurish, even though they're making millions of dollars. And that is a big negative, I'm sure, as well for the players. While they would maybe like more rest, at the end of the day, a lot of these guys aren't going to be making the money that McKinnon, McDavid, or Matthews will, if you will, and they would want more money over just seeing a reduction in pay and keeping the same average. So overall, what are my thoughts on this? I would say that I am firmly in the against it category. I don't like an in-season tournament. I do think they try to introduce that if that was the point. And I just think overall, with record chasing and players probably wanting to keep their money, and me being a fan of the league and the game in general, I want to watch hockey. I don't want to see them, cutting out 20, 25 games, 30 games, whatever it is, and see less hockey games. Would it be more exciting for the more casual fan? Probably. But I think a lot of us, we're just not casual fans. We are just very passionate about the league. Maybe we're not all the most knowledgeable, but at the end of the day, I like turning on games, even if it's not my favorite teams, and I just like being able to watch hockey from October into June. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on the for and against of a shortened regular season. What are your thoughts? What are some fors maybe I didn't mention? What are some against that I didn't really mention? Let me know all that stuff down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. Nigolo hockey already. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.